Hi, this is Sally Wood for Be Inspired, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a table cover. It should be quite quick and easy. There might be noise outside because they're expecting people here. So let's get on with it. They're using a marine fabric, so it's vinyl on top and it's softer underneath. And I've actually placed it upside down, and the reason is when I put the pins in to hold it, I don't want to have to take them back out. So I'm going to slide this into position. I have a good inch hanging over this side, and it should be the same on the other. I try to make it as even as I possibly can. I need some fabric to go around the side, so I'm going to cut it at 3.5 inch wide, all the way across, just like I do for piping. And when I've got those, I will then start placing them where I need them to be placed. I've evened the fabric along this side to about 1 inch over. Maybe it's 1.5 inches, because there's the top of the glass and here's the side of the table. Make sure you've got right sides together. I'm going to pin along here. Now I'm only going to pin about 1/2 inch in, as I want to see how it goes over. I might be able to pull it in a little bit tighter. I'm going to use dressmaking pins because they don't make such a mark. Just going to pin all of this along here, and I will evenly put that across. Now what I'll do is I'll pull it over a bit later on and see if that fits. It should do, should be perfect along there. And she wanted a little bit of a side border on here. It's easier if you can get a straight edge on your table like this to start off with. As this is an oval table, I will have to be a little bit creative as I go around the curve. I should get it quite even on both sides like this. I haven't done a table in a long time. If you wanted to, you could always measure down and make sure you've got 1/2 inch. But after all these years of doing this job, I'm usually quite spot on. Although this one actually needs to be moved down a wee tad. And this will be my sew line. As I come round the curve of the table, I'm going to run my fingers like that underneath so I can feel where the edge is, and I'm just going to guide my scissors on my fingers as I come around this arc. The only trouble with vinyl is you don't want to fold it if you can possibly help it, because it does mark. As you see, I'm not pulling it in, I'm just guiding this round as I go around this curve. I'm also trying to keep the two raw edges together. And that's important, because if you start making that wobble at all, you will lose the shape. And now I'm going to carry on around this curve. But you can see it's starting to come into shape here. I'm trying to keep the side of this fabric as vertical as possible as I go around. And that's also important because I don't want it to pull on the table. So hopefully all of this will go in and it'll be quite flat. You'll see it's all starting to twist up, but hold as it goes around. And that's what you want. You want it to be as even as you possibly can. I'm going to join the fabrics. There's 2 ways of doing it, that's the thing. I'm going to put it together, right sides together like that, and pin that also into position. Just make sure that when you do, it's as even as you possibly can. As I say, that is your sew line. And I'm just going to pop that there and pin either side like this. There's my join, and I'm just going to carry on going around like this until I get to my next join, and I'll do it exactly the same way. So I'm just popping this one in, and I've got to the end, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to roll those 2 pieces together like that and pin it into place. Now this is going to vary when I sew it together, but it just holds everything nice and neat for transportation, so I don't get anything caught and pulled out. And now I can remove it and take it home and sew. Now I've put the walking foot on for this project. I don't usually use it because I usually have to change a foot out 2 or 3 times, even for a small project. But I did it for this. I know I've pinned it this side, but I'm actually going to be sewing it from the top end here, which means I am going to be taking these pins out as I go. Pop this here. I'm not going to take all of these pins out straight away because they're the only things holding it in. And I'm not going to do what I usually do with a slip cover, which is to take the pins out and put them on the other side. mainly because this fabric is very slippery. It's a marine fabric. I am just going to start off here. I'm about 2 inches in from that join, and I'm going to, Daisy, I'm having to do this in my kitchen, and the dog's playing up. Life is happening around me. Put a 1/2 inch seam allowance on. I'm going to put this up to 5. Do forward and back so nothing can slip. Leave the needle down, and I'm going to pull this pin out here. It's heavy, it's just pulling everywhere, so I'm going to have to be really careful. And then off we go. As I get to the next pin, which you can see is under here, I'm going to pull that one out, and so to the next pin. Always put the needle down when you're going to take the pin out, because you're going to be shifting the fabric. Hopefully not by too much, but one can never tell until it's done. And then move on to the next. I'm hoping that these stitches are even, but because of the way it is, it might not be, because I'm literally guiding the fabric through. This is going to be a very slow and steady project, because marine fabric is not very forgiving. It's waterproof. She wanted a waterproof cover on the table, which is fair enough. She's got a little girl, but it slips. As I say, just remember to keep the needle down when you're moving anything around. I'm coming into the curve, so I'm going to put a little bit of tautness on the top, not very much, and it should walk in. The other thing is I tend to try to pull the fabric so it stays straight on the top. I set this up on the end of the counter because it gave me a little bit more space to work with. Just try to make sure that stays even as you can. I've just worked my way around to the first join, reverse, just literally a couple of stitches. I don't want to do too much, and I'm going to release it. Now with the side border like this, you're going to start at the bottom, and the reason is you want the bottom to be absolutely square on. And if I put that here, I need to run this outside edge just on the outside of that 5/8 mark. So remove those. This is a little bit awkward because the fabric isn't very forgiving. It wants to do its own thing, is the first problem, and the second is very, very slippery. So I'll see if I can pull that over. Put both pieces together on that mark. I'm actually going to put the needle down first, a little way in. Now the reason is, you put that down, and then the fabric is stuck. It's not going anywhere because the first stitch is going to hold it. I'm going to do a couple of stitches forward, and then I'm going to reverse all the way to the end and back, and then all the way to the top here. And again, I'm going to reverse it. And this is when you discover that when you put it back together like that, because there's no pins holding it, there's no distortion, I actually need to take that in another 1/4 inch, so a foot width in. And that's good, that's okay. You don't want it being the other way. And when I say a foot width, I've got to decide. With a 1/4 inch, there's the side of the foot here, and there's the outside edge there. I'm going to run my stitch line along the side of this edge here. There's a little window there that I can see through. It's already quite even down there, but I'll still put my needle down first, forward 2 stitches, and then reverse, and then up. And again, reverse and finish up. This is quite handy because you can actually cut along the original stitch line like that and cut that off, but you know that the side is going to fit. If I do that, it fits perfectly. I think that's going to be secure enough. I think that's going to be fine. And I can open the seam out like that, which is what I'm going to do, just to open that out like that, but I'll check when I get closer. I'm about generous inch back from the threads here, so I know that I'm overlapping, and then I'm just going to carry on sewing. Have to wriggle the fabric back into place, but that's because it's just off a curve. And as I get there, I'm going to just open that seam up like that, so that's nice and open. It doesn't matter that it's slightly off up here because nobody will see it. Move that one, and then just sew over that open seam and carry on to the next join. Now this join is actually on a curve, but I'm going to do exactly the same as I did for for the straight side one. Start at the bottom, take that one out and that, and put the same width on as I did, because I think that's the width of that I've allocated. If it's a little bit tight, it won't matter too much because I can use the curve to alter it, and it's only going to be a couple of stitches. So again, put the needle down. Now I can see the fabric twisting like mad, and that's the thing with curves. The fabric doesn't behave like it does on a straight. Make sure that's in position. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times, but it's better to make sure it's right. Put the foot down, forward and back, and then all the way to the top. And again, just check, and that can come in again. It's not quite a whole foot, but that's okay. I can do that. Actually, I'm going to put a whole foot in because I can stretch that out. It's not going to make very much difference because it might actually be that difference. I just can't see it. And again, I'm just going to cut it all the way back to that edge that I originally sewed in. If I pull that out, it works. So maybe I was right. Pop that back under. And the thing is with curves is you always tip it and put your hand under and pull, and then that always pulls the outer edge into place. Flatten the seam out. Actually, it fits perfectly. So I'm going to continue around this curve onto the beginning where I started, because I only had to put 3 strips of fabric on for the side. This is the last join. I've just finished sewing here, and that's where I began. So I'm going to maneuver all of this into place, again starting on the bottom edge because you want that to be as even as possible. And put it on there, lower the needle into place, forward, back. I'm going to see if that fits in. This one actually fits in perfectly. As with the others, I'm just going to cut back like that. The fabric's not going to fray, so it doesn't matter. I've only given it a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to pop that back underneath where I stopped sewing a short while ago. And then I'm going to sew to where I started sewing at the beginning. Open the seam up like I did on the others. Sew straight across and over my stitches and finish up. Now something I'm going to do is have a quick look at everything. I've actually gone round twice. The inner row is the first row I put in, and some of the stitches are really close together and some of them are further apart, purely because of the weight of this and the fact that I can't easily maneuver it. The second row, which is the outer side, or the one towards the bottom edge, is more even in stitch length because I could control it better. So having done that, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fight with it a 3rd time and pop that under. Now the reason is I want that to go to the inside of the tablecloth so it always hangs quite nicely, and I'm going to run this seam here as I did before, the inside edge of the foot here. Hopefully it will go in relatively evenly, I'm hoping, because I've still got the same problem. This is still going to be very heavy and I've got to maneuver it. The stitch length is still on a number 5, and here we go. Don't pull it out like that because you'll pull the stitches. You just fold it so it looks neat. And this just reinforces what you've already done. Because it's a wide arc, I don't have to worry about cutting any of it. It should all go in. When I come to the arc, I'm going to lift the fabric up like that so that it goes in nice and evenly. Just do a few stitches at a time if you're using a heavy fabric because it will twist. Just keep it even and maneuver it as you go. I've actually folded it the right side in, so it's a little bit more difficult for you to see. But this is what the outside looks like. That should hang over the side of the table pretty nicely, and I think she'll be really pleased. And as I say, even these stitches are a little bit wobbly in places, but you can't, I'm only human. I don't have a guard on the foot to keep it exact. I just have to watch as the fabric goes underneath, and this is really not an easy fabric to work with. This corner I had slightly out, but I'm not going to trim it back because there's a stitch there. I don't want that coming undone. Thank you for joining me on the tablecloth project. It's not something I usually do, but it gives you an insight on how to put a fitted cover over a table, or maybe a chest of drawers if you want to make it look pretty. Entirely up to you. Nice and simple, depending on the fabric, depends on how difficult it's going to be. And this marine fabric is certainly awkward to use because it's very stiff and it's very heavy. So I would advise a walking foot if you've got one. If not, don't worry, just try to make those stitches as even as possible as you go round. If you'd like to see more from me, please subscribe and hit the bell button. And a few thumbs up would be really good, and then I know how I'm doing. And in the meantime, take care. See you later. Ciao.